Hey guys, Brian Davis here from Spark Rental. Super glad to be with you. And I am excited. I've got a special guest today, Chris Lee, who's one of the founders of Landlord Gurus. He's here to talk to us all about property management tips, tricks, hacks, and mistakes that he's made and learned from. So, Chris, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I always like to just start at the very beginning with how you got started in property management and in real estate.
Yeah, I basically grew up with property management. I had family members, and my parents owned rental properties, ever since I was a kid. So I spent a lot of my youth, following them around and cleaning properties and painting, that kind of thing from an early age, and have just kind of stayed involved with it and, taken on more and more of the responsibilities. And as other family members have invested in their own properties, I've kind of taken a lot of that on as well, especially in the Seattle area where it's local for me. So, and then I had our in-law unit that we rent out. Experimented with both long-term and short-term rentals with that. Managed a handful of other people's short-term rentals, kind of the day-to-day aspects of that. And so, yeah, I've sort of ranged between the short and the long-term and some medium-term, and just kind of followed what my family had been doing and what my parents had been doing for years, and looking at their spreadsheets and things like that. Yeah, and then tried to take some things that I've learned along the way and kind of tried to improve that process. But yeah, that's sort of where I'm at right now.
That's great, and I love that you said that this has been a multi-generational hobby investment focus,
Right.
in your family, and that you grew up around it and learned the trade kind of by doing, with your family. I love that, and I love how hands-on real estate is, and how that can be a really good way to introduce kids, teenagers to the concept of investing. It's much more tangible when they're out there swinging a hammer and helping, helping you paint the house, as
Yeah, they
opposed
can
to,
see it. They can see it, and and feel a sense of accomplishment and actually see the results. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It feels so much more real, so much more tangible than, moving paper around with a brokerage account. I think it's a great way to teach kids about money and about investing.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. And, I've got kids of my own, and, especially when we're doing the short-term stuff and roping them into cleaning and fixing things as well. And, I mean, I think they're probably still too young to totally appreciate it, but hopefully they, I probably was at the time as well, but hopefully they take something away from there.
Well, put them to work, have them build character, as our
Yeah,
parents used to
exactly.
say.
Exactly.
No, that's wonderful. So, just out of curiosity, the in-law suite, the ADU, the accessory dwelling unit that you rent out, did you end up deciding to stick with short-term for that, or long-term? What'd you decide there?
I guess it's been mostly short-term at this point. We decided that the benefits of short-term renting and the benefits of then sometimes being able to use it ourselves or to use it for family members, that kind of flexibility kind of pushed us, in the way of short-term and keeping it as short-term. But we'll
Yeah,
see
no,
as the kids get older and we don't need the space as much. I think the plan will then at that point to go long-term.
no, it makes total sense. And I've heard that many times over from people who love short-term rentals. One of the things that they always talk about is that flexibility that you just mentioned. So,
Yeah. On the other hand, there's then new people coming into your house,
yeah,
every
and
couple of days. So it
wear
can
and
get,
tear,
yeah,
and the labor. I mean, it's way more labor intensive, obviously.
right. Every turnaround takes time, and then you just never know who you're going to get, right?
Right. So, I would love to dive in a little bit deeper into some of your tips and experiences as an experienced property manager. Since we're talking about short-term rentals, let's start there. If you had to boil down your top three tips or tricks or hacks, or whatever you want to call it, for a newbie Airbnb landlord or manager, what would you tell them? What would you say are the top three secrets to success in the industry?
Well, I would say for the short term rentals, I'd say, for me, it was thinking about it as less of a kind of property management exercise and more of a hospitality. It really was about making the guests happy, and sort of being available, or having somebody available. And I'd say to that end, the second point is to then, like, rely on resources, to help you out, whether that's cleaning or whether that's having somebody who can, let the guests in. I was managing someone's short-term rentals in a condominium building, and they did not allow self check-ins, and so that required somebody to then meet every single guest and let them in and give them the keys. And so, it really struck, the impression to me was like, I got to find someone who lives in that building who can be that person, so that I don't have to go every time. So yeah, rely on resources. It just makes life that much easier. And it's worth it at the end of the day, worth that extra expense. Yeah, I mean, and then those sort of are in my mind, what the short term and kind of very different than long term rental management.
Yeah,
It's obviously the learning curve. Yeah.
so Denny and I, my partner Denny, who co-hosts this show with me normally, it's something that we've actually talked about time and time again, and heard about from people in your space, in the short-term rental space, that it's much more hands-on. It's running a hospitality business as opposed to passive investing.
Right.
And landlording is like, long-term rental properties are still not completely passive, of course, but Denny and I have shifted our focus largely to passive real estate syndications, which you just write a check and it's over. Landlording is a little more hands-on, and short-term rentals are way more hands-on. It's really operating a business.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it really is. It is quite a bit different and does require a lot of time and again, or resources to help you do that.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, let's switch over and talk long-term rentals for a
Yeah.
minute. Tell us about some of your experiences with long-term rentals and some of your best tips for someone who's a new landlord or just getting into it.
Right.
What would you tell them are some of the secrets to success there with long-term rental property management?
Yeah, I think with long term, Eli and I, my business partner at Landlord Gurus, Eli and I have sort of identified and what we feel are kind of the main pain points for landlords, and that's maintenance. It's finding new renters. Um, those are kind of and it's rent collection are sort of the big pain points. And so, to a large degree, I recommend screening, doing proper screening, tenant screening, is like the biggest thing. If you can find good long term renters, take care of the place, pay rent on time, respect the property, respect the other residents, it goes a long ways, to making everything else run more smoothly. So, people talk about tenant screening. I don't know that everybody does it. I think a lot of people rely on their gut instinct. They say, "Oh, I met them. They said they seem great." But I think that having criteria in place, certain things that you need to happen, whether that's a minimum credit score or income to rent ratio of a certain level, or verifying employment and pay stubs and things like that. Setting that criteria and then largely sticking to it, and don't let emotions make that decision, but let the numbers and the truth kind of make that decision for you. So that's what I find is probably the most valuable and number one thing that I would start with for any new landlord.
Yeah, Denny and I love to say that the quality of your renters determines the quality of your returns as a landlord.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
that, and which we use to really talk about tenant screening, right? I mean,
Right.
tenant screening is risk mitigation 101 as a landlord. You have to have a system in place, like you said, You cannot rely on your gut or your intuition. And that's one way that you can also avoid accusations of discrimination, right? If you have a step-by-step screening system that you put every single applicant through, and you tick off those boxes, and you keep copies of your reports, and copies of your notes of conversations with employers and with ex-landlords. If someone comes out of the woodwork and accuses you of discrimination, you can say, well, no, here are all the applicants that we had for this unit, and this other person that we rented to instead of you, they were way more qualified. So
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And then where we are here in Seattle, I mean, there are a lot of a lot of other rules and regulations that are required. In terms of not only having that criteria and having it like advertised and posted with your advertisements, but also being able to timestamp those as well as like the first qualified applicant. Has to.
Oh, that's right, because Seattle does have that rule, right? As a
Right.
local
Yeah.
regulation, that you have to take the
Yeah.
first qualified applicant. So you
Exactly.
actually do need a written qualification set of criteria,
Yes.
so that you can say yes or no. You either hit the threshold or you
Exactly.
didn't.
You hit it or you didn't, and if you did yes, and you're the first one to pass that criteria, then the first choice is yours, I guess. Yeah, so there are a lot of regulations and a lot of rules that go along with tenant screening as well. But like you said, it all is there to protect you against claims of discrimination. So it's definitely good to have, and it's something that I totally recommend for anybody.
Yeah, so you and your partner Eli, you run a website called Landlord Gurus, like you said, to help landlords with some of these pain points. Denny and I often talk about how, turnovers are where like 95% of the work of being a landlord comes in. So talk to us a little bit more about Landlord Gurus, and how you guys are helping mom and pop landlords
Yeah.
ease some of those pain points.
Sure. Yeah. So Eli and I, we've known each other for a long time, and like we talked about, I was managing some properties, and he has some investment properties of his own, and was managing other properties for family as well. And we just found each other, talking to each other all the time about, hey, what do you do when this happens, or with your, I've got a tenant who is, doing this. What can I do? Or, oh, the rules have changed again. The regulations have changed. How do you handle, your rental criteria checklist, things like that. And so we just, we're constantly bouncing ideas, off each other and talking about our experiences. And so we decided that, there's a lot of other mom and pop landlords like us that are out there, and if we can get some of this down on paper or on a website, that information could be pretty useful as well. So that's sort of how Landlord Gurus came about, and we just started writing about certain experiences we had, or ways to handle this type of situation, or how to handle this type of tenant. And a lot of it comes down to tenant screening and things like that. It also we sort of were documenting our own journeys as well. What are some new things, new tools that we can use to make this whole landlord thing more profitable, or more efficient, or easier, or where we don't get woken up at 2 a.m. With phone calls from clogged toilet, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
So we just, we're looking, we're always looking for ways that we can better that experience. And so that's kind of what a lot of the stuff we have on our website is, talking about these different tools that are out there. And technology has come a long way since, I talked earlier about, my family, using spreadsheets and passing the spreadsheets on to me. And, and there's a lot of other tools out there that landlords can use that really simplify things a lot more than a spreadsheet does, or going and collecting checks in person and taking them to the bank. There's a lot of different things out there, from rent collection software, property management software, things that, tenant screening, online tools, things like that. So we talk about a lot of those tools and products as well, just as ways to make the landlord experience simpler and easier and more profitable.
No, that's great. And we'll include a link in the comments and the show notes here to landlordgurus.com. Chris, first of all, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And I want to ask, do you have any final tips for novice landlords, novice real estate investors, novice Airbnb hosts, or intermediate people, or even more advanced? Any final tips to make their lives a little easier and their returns a little higher?
Yeah, I would just say find the tools, like in the building industry and contracting industry, it's in carpentry, it's all about, having the right tool for the job, and that makes your life so much easier. And I'd say the same thing with property management and investing is find the right tools that work for you, that that will handle the job that you need, whether that's accounting or bookkeeping or rent collection or whatever it is. Find that right one that works for you, and and rely on that. Let it do the heavy lifting. So depending, it doesn't matter what it is, but if you find that right one, it'll go a long ways.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Technology has come a long way in property management and real estate investing. So, not only can it do some of the heavy lifting for you, but it can also give you a competitive advantage in an increasingly competitive space. So, Chris, thanks again for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, and we'll look forward to catching up with you soon.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. We'll talk to you later.
All right, guys, we will see you next Tuesday at the same time, 2 p.m. Eastern. So stay in touch. Hit us up at support@sparkrental.com, and we will catch you on the flip side. Bye now.